Get ready for the best holiday sale of the year. For a limited time, enjoy 50% off annual news subscriptions at inforum.news/gift. That's right, 50% off unlimited access to local news so you can stay informed and connected to your community. It's a gift you'll want to give yourself. This incredible holiday offer ends December 22nd, so don't miss out. Subscribe now at inforum.news/gift.
Fire tore through the Earle Hotel on December 13, 1951, killing 3, making news around the world, and turning a one-armed man into a hero. Hi, this is Tracy Briggs, and welcome to Back Then. If photos can cause tangible physical reactions in the body, no doubt the dozens of images of the Earle Hotel fire from the North Dakota State University archives would chill you to the bone. The fire on December 13, 1951, turned Fargo's grandest hotel, once called the finest hotel between the Twin Cities and the Pacific Coast, into an eerie ice castle fit for Queen Elsa herself. The lobby, which had once welcomed presidents, celebrities, and titans of business, was now deserted, its furniture and ornate fixtures now encased in a frigid blanket of ice. The loss of life was the greatest tragedy of the Earle Hotel fire, but it was also the day the city said goodbye to an important relic of its past. The Earle Hotel at 700 Front Street, now Main Avenue, across from the DeLandrecies building and the Northern Pacific Railway Depot, was among the most established lots in town. It was built in 1898 as the Waldorf Hotel on the site of the old Pioneer Sherman Hotel, which was also destroyed by fire. Previously, the site had been the location of underground stables for the horses of General Thomas L. Rosser when he established Fargo on the Prairie in 1871. An opening night banquet on April 12, 1899, was the height of elegance and grandeur, with uniformed waiters and waitresses serving dinner as they marched in formation to the music. The one drawback? It was such a popular banquet that the 500 guests had to be served in shifts between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. There is some dispute about how many rooms were in the hotel. Some reports say as few as 108, others say 136. But there is no dispute that they were some of the finest rooms in Fargo-Moorhead. 40 suites with baths and 65 rooms with hot and cold water. It was the first hotel in North Dakota with an electric elevator. Many of the rooms had mahogany and bird's-eye maple furniture. According to the evening edition of the Forum from December 13, 1951, the first fire alarm sounded at 7:09 a.m. that morning. This is what that story said. When firemen arrived, flames were shooting from 4 windows on the 3rd floor of the north side of the structure facing Front Street. The fire drove guests to the street, most of them wearing only the clothing they could throw on their backs. Many wore coats covering their night apparel. Many wore bedroom slippers. Almost immediately, the fire department knew this was going to be very bad. The hotel was at near capacity, with 136 guests needing to get out. All Fargo units were dispatched to help. Moorhead also sent equipment and was on standby to cover any other calls that had come in Fargo that morning. 2 hours into fighting the fire, in temperatures around 13 below zero, at least one firefighter, Al Kramer, was taken to the hospital for exhaustion. At one point, fire crews had to back away from the building as the brick walls were crashing down around them, exposing the rooms inside. Onlookers could now see how thousands of gallons of water had turned everything left inside into ice sculptures, while outside, the street had become like a skating rink, a frigid, eerie, and dangerous scene. The night elevator operator, John Erickson, was there when the fire started. His mind turned to one thing. This is what he told the Forum back then. I was off duty and in the lobby when the alarm sounded, and the first thing I thought about was the woman in room 330. She was crippled, and I knew it. Erickson said he dashed up to the 3rd floor, but couldn't reach the woman's room because of smoke and fire in the hall. He said, The fire was so bad I couldn't get to it, so I knocked on some doors and kicked in a couple when they wouldn't answer. Then I got out of there. Later reports would call that area of the third floor Death Corner, as it was where the fire was believed to have started and where 2 of the 3 people killed were staying. One of them was that handicapped woman in room 330 that Erickson had tried to save. She was 80-year-old retired teacher Catherine Morton. Also dead was W.S. Hooper. He was 79. He was a former Fargo postmaster, and he was staying in room 326. The young couple staying in room 328, right between Morton and Hooper, Marvin and Lorene Wagarin, managed to escape. The other person who died in the fire was Mrs. J.H. Sampson. She was in a room on the other side of the third floor. As devastating as the loss of life was at the Earle, it could have been far worse had it not been for the bravery of the man who came to be known as the one-armed hero. Ernest Hickman was a 37-year-old welder from Osage, Minnesota. He's credited with saving an estimated 50 lives by rousing guests on the top 3 floors of the hotel, risking his own life. Hickman was also a guest at the hotel. He told the Forum shortly after the fire that he was having trouble sleeping that night. He said, "I woke up about 5 a.m. and I had a premonition of disaster. I just couldn't go back to sleep." So he went to the nearby Pacific Cafe for an early breakfast, but soon returned to his room where he says he smelled something like burning rags. He ran into the hall where someone yelled fire. Then he went up and down the hallways of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors, banging on doors and waking people up. He recalled, "Finally, it got so bad I couldn't stand it. I went back to my room and got my money, but I had to leave my artificial arm, my welding equipment, all of my belongings." The Forum back then was full of interviews with people who heralded Hickman as a genuine hero. As Ray Dahlbeck of Wing, North Dakota sipped on his Red Cross coffee, he said, "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him." Bellboy John Wheaton, who lived on the 4th floor of the hotel, agreed. "That's right, I heard him pounding on my door, and he kept yelling the house is on fire. He sure did a good job of waking everyone." Hickman was humble in accepting the praise and wasn't dwelling on what he had lost. He told the Forum, "I don't mind losing the stuff so long as the people got out. As far as the arm goes, I think the Minnesota Vocational Rehabilitation Service will replace that." The hours and even days that followed the fire were chaotic. People had run down the stairs of the hotel in their pajamas and slippers. They huddled together in the bitter temperatures, speculating on who got out and who didn't. Many people who had been unaccounted for were found safe. Those who were injured eventually recovered. Survivors were eventually sheltered in the warmth of the Northern Pacific Depot across the street, and later the Red Cross set up disaster headquarters in the Avalon Ballroom at 13 Broadway to assist with meals, clothing, and monetary donations. The images coming from the fire that morning were breathtaking. The stark contrast of the intense flames burning in the bitter cold and icy landscape it all left behind. Former Forum history columnist Andrea Hunter Halgrimson noted in 2004 that the fire made national and international headlines. She wrote, "Aerial photos show smoke rising 1,800 feet and billowing over the city." Several weeks after the fire, Fargo realtor Harry Arneson received a picture of the plume that had appeared in a newspaper in Luxembourg. It was sent to him by friends Arneson had met during his World War II service. Halgrimson was just a little girl in 1951, and she said she never forgot seeing what had happened to the elegant hotel, where countless dances were held, and Teddy Roosevelt even spoke once on the balcony. She wrote, "What I remember best is seeing the hotel a few days after the fire, sheathed in a ghostly coating of ice. To a child of 11, it was a memorable and frightening sight." The Earle Hotel never recovered. This was the second fire it had had that year. The damages exceeded $225,000, so the building was torn down. New buildings were soon constructed on the lot where the Earle once stood. Businesses have come and gone on that corner, but nothing quite as grand as what was lost on December 13th, 1951. Just one side note, I've talked a lot about the photos that came out of the Earle that day. I would urge you to look at these photos, if not on my story, which you can certainly find on inform.com. You can also go to digitalhorizons.com. That is the website for the NDSU archives. Huge thanks to them for providing these photos. Again, they're pretty spectacular. Like I said, eerie and icy, and the digital archives at NDSU, they're wonderful people who help me every single time I do these back then stories. So big thanks to them, and do check those pictures out on my story on inform.com. And again, that is Back Then for this week. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope you catch me next time.
Get reliable and accurate local news with inform.com. Inform.com is your trusted local news source with journalists dedicated to keeping you informed about what's happening in your community. Visit inform.com now.